Good morning. We have Belinda Allen joining us today for our Third Party Thursday series. She is a Microsoft MVP and a wonderful extension of our Maynard team. We like to use her as a resource, and she is going to give us an introduction to Power BI with the ins and outs of Power BI. Belinda, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much, and hi everybody. We're going to be talking about Power BI, and this is more of an introductory type of session, but we'll be doing heavy on the demos. Hopefully, I have a lot of slides, but I'm going to try to skip as many as I can show you the meat and the potatoes of what's going on. Just in case, we'll do an introduction, we'll connect to some data, and then we'll do demos. So just in case you're not familiar with what Power BI is, it's a set of Microsoft tools. It's part of what Microsoft calls the Power Platform. And these tools enable you to connect to various data sets and create reports that report on all of them that are visual in nature. And so they tend to look like what people think of when they think of a dashboard, with charts and graphs and numbers, and they interact with each other. And the thing about these reports are, once you build them, you can publish them to the Power BI service, which is a website, a web service that Microsoft has, and then you can create dashboards off all of your reports that you've uploaded. Now, the cool thing about creating the dashboards then and the reports are they're available on your mobile devices. And so it's a really cool tool, and there's a free version that'll get you started, and then there's a professional version, which is only $10 a user a month. And you could talk with the good people at Maynard Solutions about that, about how to get that. And so the difference between the two has to do with sharing. So we'll talk about sharing more in a little bit. It's more involved than just what you think of when you think of sharing. Now, there are a couple parts of Power BI. There's the desktop, which is a free download that you put on your machine. And on the desktop, this is where most people do the building. And this is where you're going to want to take data from multiple sources and link it together. Let's say you're a GP user and you use Dynamics C&E or CRM, and you want to put the data on that together and report on it. Let's say you use BC and you use Microsoft C&E. You could put that data together. Let's say you use, what are some of the other products you work with?
We use Business Central, and we use Microsoft GP and Intact.
Intact. Okay, I was right. I should have said it. So let's say you use Intact and Salesforce, and you want to put that information together. So maybe you have two companies. One uses BC, one uses Intact, and they both use CRM, and you want to connect all those together. You can create all of these disparate systems together inside of the Power BI desktop. Once you do that and you build out your reports, you publish them to the service or to the web, to the Microsoft PowerBI.com site. It's a secure login. It's part of the Office 365 Azure thing. And then it's available for free on your mobile devices. You can go to the iTunes store, for example, and download it for the Power BI mobile app for free and consume your data. You can download it from the Android store. You can, if you have another tablet, you can get one from the Microsoft store. So you can get your mobile device for free. And so it's really very simple to consume and use. Now, normally the workflow when you're building out Power BI reports are you create it in the desktop, you share it or publish it to the service, you share it with other users. Remember, that's that free or that paid version, that $10 a user a month. And then you can consume the data in your mobile device. And this is typically the workflow. It's not always this way. Some people will go directly to the service and build. There is a little less functionality there, but they say, that's all I need, so I'm going to build from there. But this is the typical workflow. And again, they're going to be emailing you the slide deck after the webinar is over. Now, once you publish it to the service, you can have multiple things available to you to view. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. So you can take an existing Excel report and upload it. So one of the things I like to build when I'm building Power BI is I like to build what I call operational financial statements. And these are something that report on a lot of the same information, but they're just easier to read. And they're looking at data real time, all the way through right now. So my thought is you have your last published or finished financial statement as an Excel file that you can view if you want to go and look at what it was, your final numbers for last month. But you could use the operational piece for everything through today. And so that's very cool and easy. And when you have that out there in the Power BI service, you're actually using Excel Online to view. So you don't even have to have Excel loaded on your machine, which is really nice. Yeah, working our way up, we next have a data set. So let's say in that Power BI desktop, we connect to BC and we connect to Dynamic CRM or Dynamic CE. We can put those two different data sources together, and combined they will become a single data set. And so when we refresh that data set, it'll refresh those individual connections. And then anything in that data set we can build reports off of, which is the next one up, the orange one. So reports they look a lot like a dashboard because they're all visualization pages. The biggest difference between reports and dashboards, there are two, but for me is the interactive capability. So and I'm going to show you that today. If I have a chart that says, here is my customer list, and here is my sales for the month, and I want to see how many what my sales were for a salesperson, I could go to the salesperson field in the customer list and click on it, and then my graph of sales will change to only display the sales for either that customer or that salesperson. So we'll play with interactivity in just a bit. And then again, all the reports you create from all the different data sets can be used on a dashboard. You could even put pieces of Excel on there. We're not going to be doing that today, but you could put pieces of Excel on there. And all these things on the dashboard, then you can make it easier to consume. So what you're trying to achieve when you do a dashboard that's the second big difference. It doesn't have to all come from one report. Is you put all the things that are important to you on that single dashboard. So that if you're looking at sales, for example, and you go, I want to know more about sales, I'm going to click on this, it's going to open up the corresponding sales report or the report that visual came from. If I also have cash balance on there and I want to look at my cash balance, I click on that, it may go to a whole different report from a whole different data source. And so you could put all the things that are important to you together on there. Perhaps you want to know Major League Baseball. Maybe you build a report there and you want to put that link on there. Whatever you want to put on, you can get to from the dashboard. Now, like I said, I'm going to skip a lot of slides, but I'm not going to skip this next couple because this is important. There are new features coming out every single month to the desktop, and the service, the website, is getting updated weekly. Now, because of that, you need to keep your version on your local machine consistent with everybody else, and you want to have it updated as well. So because there are a lot of great new features being added every single month. Easiest way to do that, there are two ways. You could download it from the Power BI service, but then you have to go around and install it on everybody's machine every single month. If you get it from the Microsoft Store as one of the apps, there are two giant advantages. One, it will automatically update every single time there's a new version out. So you'll be getting versions newer. Everybody will be running the same version because of that. And it doesn't require local admin rights to install. So not only is it getting updated for you automatically, you're not having to call IT to come down and log in as admin on your local machine just to get the Power BI desktop updated. So those are some huge factors. If you want to put some controls in on it, there's some things that admin people can do, just FYI, to control how frequently updates happen from the store. But at least everyone will be running on the same version, and it'll happen without IT having to get involved, which is going to save you some time and money. And that's the purpose of this. We want to be able to make decisions faster. We want you to be more profitable, and we want you to overall have a better working experience. So that being done, I'm not going to get into a lot of the individual slide files. You can have access to them, but I do want to point out a couple of things. So when you connect to your data, you have three options: import, direct query, and live, those on the left. And the one that is used the most frequently, bar none, is the import. And I'll show you how that works in just a few moments. But that one is the one that is most beneficial. It has the most features available. You can do a direct query with a lot of SQL databases, many more of them, but you lose some important features like the ability to do time intelligence, like year to date, month over month, year over year, things like that. So I really recommend that you do the import. Live will only work with SQL Server analysis services. So I'm going to use an example. The data I'm using is SQL Server data, but when we import it today, it'll come from Excel. So this is an example of a connection where we're importing it, where we're connecting directly to the Excel. And when you're importing, let's say you're getting the data from SQL Server. And again, I'm doing it from Excel, but we're going to pretend it's from SQL Server. Your data is residing in SQL Server. We're not changing that. We're not touching that. We're not altering that. But when we import it, the data is going to then be uploaded into the Power BI desktop cache, or what I call the InMemory data model. And it compresses it a lot. So you can get a lot of data in there. And that at that point, it resides in the file itself. And then Power BI just uses and queries the data that's in that cache. When we upload it from the Power BI desktop, which is in orange, and we publish the report to the Power BI service in green, then the data in that in-memory data model, the cache for the Power BI desktop file, it's going to reside in the Microsoft Data Center. So it still stays completely secure. It uses Azure Active Directory, so it is as secure as Office 365 because that is basically using the same domain for that. All right, so I'm going to skip through a few slides here. I just talk about different connectors because if we have time at the end, I'll go back to them, but I want to go to the live demo. And again, it doesn't have to be something local. You can connect to all kinds of things, and we're going to do that now. So I am going to start with a blank report. I just saved it with demo 1, but I have nothing connected to it whatsoever. This is Power BI Desktop, and it has a lot of the look and feel of a lot of the Microsoft products. So we have a menu across the top. We have a ribbon going across our menu. Over on the right, we have 3 blades, one for fields. These are all of our data connections that we have right now. I don't have any. We have visualization. So if you've ever done a pivot table or a chart in Excel, then this is very similar to where you put the axis or what you put in the rows or the columns. So not only do we have the different kinds of visualizations that can appear, but then we have the fields below them where we can add things. And then over here we have a filter pane, and we can put filters on the entire report. We can put them just on a page, or we can put them on an individual visualization. And these are going to be, for the most part, static filters, but you can do a little bit of alteration to them. You can still put slicers on the report. So if you want the user to have the ability to interact, they can do that with the slicers. We have our report canvas area here in the middle. This is where we're going to build our report. And we have our modes right now. We'll talk more about the modes later, but right now we're on the first one, which is the report mode. So we're going to go ahead and connect to our data. We're going to be using customer data, invoice data, and salesperson data. And this is my favorite data set to use when I'm talking to a broad audience. And the reason for that is everybody has revenue in their business. So they have to deal with the revenue coming in, and they have to deal with where the revenue comes from, regardless of whether they're customers, whether they're funds or donations. Everybody has that in common. And if you're here because you use the CRM system only, then it still applies. So this is why I use the customers, I use invoices, and I use salespeople. It just so happens this data set, even though it is Excel, comes from GP. It doesn't matter where it comes from. I use GP a lot because I know the data model, or how the data is lined out in GP inside and out. So I could look at a field and know exactly what it is and how it works. So it's the only reason I use it. It doesn't matter what you use. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and connect to our data. So on our menu at the top, we have this Get Data option. So these are all of our different kinds of data connections that we have available to us. We can get it from a file, and this is what we're going to do, get it from an Excel file. We can even extract data from a PDF. That's pretty amazing. We have databases. So here's the SQL Server databases. There are a lot of different database options out here, as you can see. We have the Power Platform. And again, Power BI is part of the Power Platform. So if you happen to use the Common Data Service, which is part of the Power Platform, you can use that. And we also have other Power BI data sets that we can connect to. Azure tools, there's a lot of Azure tools. There are a lot of online services that you can see here, like here is Business Central. Then we have some Salesforce objects and reports that you can connect, GitHub if you want to use that, LinkedIn, Smartsheet. There's all kinds of things that you can connect to depending on what you want to see. So you could literally connect, let's say you use Zendex and you use BC, then you can connect those together as well. So we would just connect to one piece at a time. Under Other, we have the ability to use the web, which would actually be like an API, if you're familiar with APIs. APIs just take you to a single point of data. There's also OData feeds. You can get into your Active Directory and build some things out. I often connect to my Exchange so I can help me clean out my inbox, particularly if I've been away for a week or so. I can see where the bulk of things are coming from. So a lot of different options here, including a blank one where you can hard code things in. All right, I'm just going to go and grab Excel and connect to that. And it's going to say, okay, where's the Excel file? So here is the first one I'm going to grab. I'm going to grab the one called Customers. So I'll go ahead and connect to that. It's actually going to open up Query Editor. And the Query Editor it opens up, it's kind of another application that resides inside of it. Oh, first it's looking at the spreadsheet. It sees a table called Customers on sheet 1. So I want the table. If I highlight it, I could see all of the information just to make sure I have the right data. So I'll connect to that and then click on Transform. So it opens the Query Editor. Now, if you're familiar with the Query Editor in Excel, it opened on another screen. It's the same one, only this one will probably have more features in it because it gets updated more frequently. Now in the Query Editor, we're just looking at the data. We can't change the data, but we could add columns, we could model it, we can clean it up, we could do a lot of different things with it. So as you can see, I have all of my fields across the top. I typically say I have what I call Belinda's 3 rules. Change the name of the query to something that makes sense. Customers works. And then I usually say get rid of any unnecessary columns. And the reason for that is if you could look down in the bottom left, this particular, I pulled this from a view in my SQL database, which is the same one that Smart List uses if you have GP. And so there are 165 columns and we don't want anywhere near that much. I just want some basic customer information, including their balance and which salesperson they work with. So what I'm going to do on the menu across the top is I'm going to click off the name there. I'm going to click on Choose Columns, and I have the ability then to pick and choose which columns I want. So I want to get rid of more than I want to keep. So I'm going to unselect all, grab the customer number, the customer name. I'm going to get the address, city, state, and zip. I also want the country, so I'm going to look for the country. There it is. I want the balance. So there's the customer balance. I also want the salesperson ID, and I want the sales territory. You know what? And I also have the ability to put customers on hold, so I want to see if any customers are on hold. So I'm going to click OK, and now I'm down to 12 columns. So it's something that's manageable. And I could see all of my transactions. Now, what's really cool about this is I can use filters just like in Excel to see pieces of data. Like right now, there are no customers on hold. I could look and see how many salespeople I have. So there are all my salespeople. And the fact that I have blank means there are some that don't have salespeople assigned to them. But here are all of my customer information. The next thing I tend to do in the third rule is I verify the data type for each of these. So if I look right here on address that says ABC, that means it is a text. You could also highlight it and see the data type spelled out up here. And I verify all of these. And the reason that I do that is because that controls how the field will act. So if I want to add fields together, they need to be numerical fields. Otherwise, I won't be able to add them together. So I'm going to connect to another piece of data. So this time, instead, I don't have to go back to Power BI and get data. I can click on New Source, and I'll go through the exact same window here. So I'm going to go ahead and in Excel, get my salesperson file. And we're going to dig in a little bit more here. And I want to get the table, not the sheet. Now this one actually came from a table in the SQL database. So you notice that the names aren't really nice, and neither is the field name. So I'm going to change this and call this salesperson. And this, what I'm doing now is what's called modeling the data. This is where you spend the bulk of your time, believe it or not, because you want to make the data easy for people to consume. You want to make it, you want to find the person that struggles with like learning something new the most, and you want to make it as easy for them as possible, encourage them to work with you, and then it'll be more adoptable for everybody else. So let's go through. I'm going to remove columns because that was my next rule. I'm going to grab the salesperson ID, the first name, middle name, no middle name. We'll get the last name. I also want the sales territory, and I want the commission percent. And that's all I need. So now I have these fields, so I'm going to check the type. That's text, 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 text. Great. This is commission percent. That is not a whole number. So I'm going to change that to percent. Now, when you're looking at this, you know, okay, for sure, our sales commission is not 30,000%. If it was, we would all want to work for that company, because every dollar we earn, we sell, we would get $30,000. So obviously that's just stored in the SQL database differently. So I really need to divide this by 10,000 to get the percent. But remember, I can't edit the fields. But what I can do is by modeling the data, I don't want to edit them individually anyhow, because we want to do things that are repeatable. So what I'm going to do is come over to this transform option. And now, because this is a numerical field, percents numerical, I could use the standard area and tell it I want to divide by 10,000. And it's not uncommon for SQL to store it that way. So now it's 3%. So that looks really good. Nice. Now I have the first name and last name as separate fields, but I want to have just one name for the salesperson. So I'm going to highlight the salesperson first name first, and then I'll hold my control key down and then select the last name. Now I could either right mouse click and merge, or still on this transform ribbon, I could choose to merge. I want to put a space between them, and I'm going to change the new field name from merged to salesperson. And now it has taken those two fields and made them one. But you notice we have an issue here. There's a whole lot of spaces, and I only told it to put a space. That's because the field is stored with a lot of excess space. A lot of times, unbeknownst to most report builders, someone in IT, whoever builds, for example, helps model your data, some fields get stored with that extra space at the end. So if it holds 15 characters, and my name's Belinda, which has 7 characters, it's going to have 8 spaces at the end of it. So we need to get rid of those spaces. Now, one of the things that's been happening as I've been working on this data is that it's tracking every single thing I do. And usually I go through and rename all these steps so that I know exactly what they are. I could just right mouse click on them and choose to rename. But you'll notice some of them even have a gear. And if I click on that gear, I could go right back to that step and clean it up. So if I meant to add a field and I didn't, I can go back to this remove other columns and re-add the field. So there's a lot of things I can do here. Now, I'm going to come right before this merge step. And what I'm going to do is get rid of all the extra space. And this is called the trim feature. So I could go ahead, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight all 3 of these. You know, I'll do all 4 of these text columns. I'm going to get rid of any extra space at the beginning or the end. So like where it says territory space 2, it's not going to alter that. So what I would do here, normally I would come up and in here choose format, or you could also right mouse click and format. And I'm going to choose trim. And because I was highlighted up here, I'm going to insert that step, come back down, and now that looks good. Now, if I wanted this to be last name, first name, I could simply remove that last merge step. This time I'll select the last name first and then the first name, and I'll choose merge. And this time I'll separate it by something custom. I'll put a comma and a space. And now I'll call this salesperson. Great. Now, I would normally come in next and add in the salesperson or the sales data, but I'm going to skip to one where I've already done that. So I'm just going to go back to the Home tab and close and apply. And what you're going to notice when this comes up is I have these two queries here. And if I open up salesperson, I only see those fields. I should have renamed them all. I didn't do that. But I only see those fields, and I have my customers here. And before I do anything else, let me just go through and select. I'm going to make that bigger so we can see the field names. I'm going to just select customer name, and it starts populating a table. Because that's text, it knows, okay, the default for a text is going to be a table. And then if I select customer balance, right next to it, I see the customer balance. This is like a very simple pivot table. I'll click over here in the blank space. If I click on customer balance first, I get a clustered bar chart. And I realize I probably should have added class. We might do that in just a moment, but we can do it by territory in the meantime. So now here in the visualization pane on the right, I see the axis, the legend, and the value. And that's because my handlebars are around this visual. I've selected this visual. So if I wanted to do it by, maybe we'll just do it by salesperson. I'll move salesperson to the axis, and now I can see the salesperson and their total sales they have. If I hover over any one of these, I see the salesperson ID and the customer balance that makes up that salesperson ID. If I click on that particular field, you notice that the total dollar value changed. Let me come down to Gary. So now you could definitely tell it changed. These are just Gary's customers. This is part of that interactivity I was talking about. I'm going to go ahead and just choose save and close this out. And close this out. And now let me open up my second one. This is the web page in the back. We'll be there in soon enough. All right, so here I have the customers connected, this date. I've added in my sales line items, and I even have the salesperson. Now, date is something I did differently, and I'll show you how I did that. But meanwhile, let me, actually, you know what? Let me go straight to number 3. I want you to see the whole picture. All right, so I want to see more about customer. I want to get that customer class in there. I forgot to add customer class. So what I'm going to do is just open up the query editor again. It takes me back to the query editor, customers highlighted. I'm going to go back to that remove other columns, and I'm going to find my class. There it is. I'll add that in. And now, if I scroll to the right, there's my customer class. Now, while I'm at it, just to make sure everything stays in sync, I'm going to highlight the salesperson ID, whoop, not the balance, salesperson ID. I'm holding the control key down, customer class, and customer number, and I'm going to trim this. And the reason why I'm doing this, sorry, my dog is barking. And the reason why I'm doing this, I'm going to do transform trim, is I want to create relationships between tables. And I want to make sure that I don't have blank spaces in one at the end in one table and not the other. So I'll also go to my sales line items, and I'm going to do the same for customer number here. Transform and trim. Now you can see I have a lot more steps here because I did a lot more. I only brought in the quantity and the unit cost and the unit price, but I wanted to get the total cost, total price, and the gross margin. So I added those steps in right here on the spot. So that's one of the things that I did. Now you notice I only have 3 queries here. If you look on the left, customer, salesperson, and salesperson items. I'm going to go ahead and close and apply again. But you notice over here, I have, once this finishes, it's bringing over any additional changes to the data model made. I have date as well. Now, the reason why I have date is I want to be able to do time intelligence. So using some functionality in a tool called DAX, which is part of Power BI. It's also part of it's Query Editor, it's part of Power Pivot in Excel, and it's also part of SQL Server Analysis Server, the tabular model. I could create a data source with dates in it. And the reason why you would do this is you basically need to have a calendar if you want to do any time intelligence. So let's finish out the data modeling for the calendar. Then we'll make sure we have relationships set between all of these tables, because again, at this point, Power BI doesn't care where they came from. They might have come from the same SQL database. They might have come from a SQL database, an Azure database, and a service from MailChimp. It might have come from Exchange and Zendesk, wherever you want it to come from. We manually create the relationships. So I'm going to click on the data tab, and now for all of these queries, I could see the data as it appears. And this is where I could do some data modeling as far as how it appears. For example, gross margin. If I want that to always show up with decimal places, I can go to the modeling ribbon, and I could say format this as currency and always give me 2 decimal places. And now you can see there's a $sign there, and it forces the 2 decimal places. And I might want to do the same with my other 2 fields. So let me format these. So you can see why it could take a while. And when you're starting out, you do not want to have too many fields, or you're going to overwhelm yourself, and you're going to overwhelm the people who are consuming the reports. Good, so now I have all that done. And then I could also see salesperson information. Let me go to date for a moment. Now here's the code I used to get the calendar, and my data, all my data is between 2024 and 2028. So I just hard coded in a date range that cover those years. Now you need to have a calendar that has 1 row for every single day of the year, every single day of the calendar year, whether it's a calendar year or a fiscal year. So if you're on a fiscal year, you would do it for a fiscal year. And so that's what I did. So here's my date field. Here's my year. I have the month number. So if it's July, it's a 7. And actually, if I resort this, it'll sort with starting January 1st. I used that month number because I'm sorting the month here by that month number, so it doesn't sort alphabetically. I just go up to sort column and choose sort it by the month number. I have the day from like January 1st on that one, the weekday, and then I have the quarter appearing. So these are all fields that I can use. Let me collapse that up. Now I want to take and make this officially my calendar. So I'm going to just choose to mark it as my date calendar. It's going to validate that it has all the dates and of a full calendar, and that there's no duplicates, and that's set. So now I'm going to tell it which column is my date column, which is this column here. And now I could use time intelligence formulas in DAX, like year to date, month over month, year over year, things like that. That'll make it easier for me. Now you may be wondering why the month number is highlighted or dimmed out. That's because I made that invisible to the users on the report level. If I go back to report mode and open up the date, you're going to see there is no month number here because I want everyone to use the month name here. I only pulled out the month number so that I had something to sort by. Cool. Now there's also this relationship mode, and this is where we establish our relationships between things. So here for sales line, I'm connecting to the customer number over here. Now I've hidden the sales number in the sales line because there's no point in having it in 2 fields. People are it's logical that when you want the customer number, you're going to go to the customer record. When you want the salesperson ID, you're going to go to the salesperson record. So that's pretty logical. And so I've created all of these relationships, and we could see them more either by clicking on them, and it'll open up document date to the date here. That's how those are connected. Or on the home ribbon, we can see sales line item is using customer number to customer number. And you'll also note it has the cardinality, which direction it goes, many to one. So in this case, a customer can have many invoice line items, but they'll only exist once in a customer file. So if you do any kind of report management, you'll see that. All right, that is, I think we'll be adding some new fields in, but that's the gist of all of the report modeling we're going to do. What we're going to do now is build a report. So I want to look at some, first of all, I want to look at some AR information. So I'm going to rename this page to accounts receivable. No, we'll just call it customer information. Okay, so this is customer information, and I just want to click on this format option. I want to make the background just so it looks a little better, be a little pale gray. Nice. All right, now that I've done that, I'm going to, first of all, put a number of customers I have. So I'm going to start by adding a card in, and I'm going to use a visualization called a card. So if I have that highlighted and I just go to the customers, I'm going to make that bigger so you can see everything. I'm going to drag the customer number to that field area. And it's saying, all right, it's going to put the first customer number. Well, I don't want it to do that. I wanted to count my customers. So I'm going to choose this drop-down list, and I'm going to say do a distinct count, or in this case, count, because the record will only exist one time. Here are the number of customers that I have. So I could just close that up, shrink it up a little bit. And did I get the back of that page colored? I don't think I did. If I did it way too light. I did. Let me go a little darker. Oh, the transparency's on. That's what it is. There we go. All right, that looks good. Let me go back to my fields. All right, so there's the number of customers we have. Now, perhaps I want to see who has the 5 customers with the largest balance. So what I'm going to do is maybe I want this in a clustered bar chart. So I'll start with a bar chart. Then I'm going to just fill in the screen over here. So I'm going to take my customer name and drag it into the axis. And then in the value, I'll put in the customer balance. So if I were to look at this now, I could see all of my customers. So what I'm going to do is come over to this filter. I have this highlighted now. So in the filter pane for this visual, I can see I'm using customer balance and I'm using customer name. What I want to do is put a filter on which customers I'm seeing. So I'll click on the drop-down list. Now I could manually select a few. I could also put some advanced filtering in, maybe starts with a B. But instead I'm going to go to top in, and I'll say show me the top 5 customers. And it says top 5 by what? And I'm going to do top 5 by balance. And then I'll apply that filter. Now once I do that, oh, I'm using count of customer balance. Let me use sum of customer balance. There we go. Now I see my top 5 customer balances, and why am I seeing it looking like that? Walton could, oh, it's still doing, oh, over here's the count, that's why. Okay, let me change that to sum. There we go. So here are our top 5 customer balances. Now, if I were to select on Contoso, I see my customer count goes to 1. So this one is by customers. Let's do a similar one. You can see the name. We'll do a similar one for salesperson ID. So I'm going to come in this time and maybe we'll use a clustered bar chart. I'll drag that out. And in the salesperson ID, what I'm going to do is come in and put the customer balance into the value. Obviously, I don't have that field type right because it keeps setting to count instead of sum. And then I'm going to go down to the salesperson ID and grab the salesperson's name and put that in the axis. And so now I can see that I'm getting, it still must be, let me check my data type on customer balance. Maybe I did not follow Belinda's 3 rules and set that right. It's set to a decimal number. Oh, it's set to not summarize by default. So let me change that so it summarizes. Okay. Now, let me just get rid of it here for a moment, and then I'm going to put it back. Why am I not getting it by customer? Oh, maybe my table is not linked right. That's probably the case. Salesperson to salesperson. Yep, you know what probably happened is I probably did not format one right. There's probably a link. Let's see, many to one, many here, one here. Not sure why that happened. So anyhow, we'll just put state in instead. There we go. So here's our customer by state. Maybe we want to see the balance instead of by state like this. Maybe we want to see it in a map. So I'm going to change this to be a map. And now it's asking me for location. Now, one of the things I'm going to do before I set the location is I'm going to go back to the modeling option. And on the customers, I'm going to highlight the address. And on the modeling tab, I'm going to tell it this is actually a street address. This one is actually a city. This one's actually a state or province. This one is a postal code or zip code. And then we have country. Now, the reason I did this is now it knows automatically how to populate everything. So if I were to zoom in here, I'm just zooming in with my mouse, I could see Illinois, and that's going to, we see now, none of those are in the top 5, but there are 19 customers that make up that. Here's one closer to your neck of the woods. Alton Manufacturing is there, but and there are 10 other customers in that area as well. So it's interesting that these are where more sales occurred because only of the 2 bubbles, only one of the top 5 customers existed in there. Let's add another page. Actually, let's just duplicate. We'll call this one sales. And I'm going to get rid of these 2. I'll take this number. And what I'm going to do here instead, let's open up sales line items. And what I'll do is take the document number and drop it in. And I'm going to make sure that's set to distinct count because this is counting the line items. So I can see there are a total number of documents here. What I want to do is add in a line chart for this one. So here's my line chart. And then I would fill it out, access, legend, and then values. And I can put multiple values in here. So what I'm going to do for, before I begin is I'm going to put month in the legend. I think it's going to be in the legend. We'll see. Let's take month and drag it to the legend. Oop, nope, we want it in the access. Put it in the access. I think that's where we want it. And then we're going to put in the gross margin into the values. Now, here's the gross margin by month. I could see that, but I don't necessarily know what year it is. And that does keep popping up because of the way I did the formula. A little annoying there while we're building it, but we don't know what year it is. So if we wanted to add a year, I'm going to click anywhere in the blank area and I'll add a slicer in. And now I'm going to come back up to the date and I'm going to put a date in that slicer. And there's the full date. I don't want the full date, I just want the year, so I probably should have just put in the year. It still gives me this kind of slider, but I could change it to be a drop-down list or just a list in general. So here is my year. And now if I select 2027, I can see my year. And I could put in multiple things side by side. So I have my gross margin in this particular filter. Let me also add in the total sales. So I'm going to get the total price, put that in. Whoop, that's unit price. Total price, put that in. Let me get rid of gross margin and put in total cost as well. So now I have 2 lines that represent my data. I'm also going to come over here and do one more thing real fast. And this is Now this one I'm going to have represent my total price. There's the sum of my total price. And it's kind of rounding, so I don't want it to round. So I'm going to go in the format and just do a little formatting here where I'm telling it not to round. I'm going to make that font a lot smaller so we can see the whole number. Cool. And what I may do is go ahead and say, if this is my total price, I want to change the background color of this to not be white, but instead be a shade of red. Nope, a shade of green, because that's my total sale. So we'll do a shade of blue. And then I'm going to copy and paste this again. And this time we'll make this one red. And I'm going to go back to where my fields work, and I'm going to put in total cost on this one. And so now I can see the total cost and the total price with the line. So let me make this other line, make sure the lines match up here so that we can see the colors. Now I know this may sound a little silly. Okay, the price is good. Let's make that one red. But it makes it easier to tell which one is which. So again, I could hover at any given month and see the total price and the total cost. So if I switch years, it's all going to change. There's nothing in that year. 2029, 2028, only 1 month, September, 2026. So I could look year over year. You could even build formulas where you can make this be a year over year in here. Now, if I highlight April here and right mouse click, I could see the data as a table, so I could see it laid out like this. But maybe I want to get into a little more detail. I want to see the detail that makes up this number. So I'm going to just come in and add a page here. And when I add the page, I'm going to add in a matrix here, which is kind of like a pivot table inside of Excel. So I've got my matrix here. And in my matrix, I see rows and columns and values, just like a pivot table in Excel. So in my rows, I want to perhaps put the customer name. So let me get the customer number first. I'll put that as a row. And then I want to get the customer name and make that a row. In the columns, I want to use the month and perhaps the year. So let's see, we got those. No, let me just put month in. In the value here, we're going to go out and get those other two fields we've been using, total price and total cost. Now let's clean up this matrix a lot. So first thing I want to do right now, you would have to click on it to open it up. So what I want to do right now is go in and do a little formatting just like you would inside of a pivot table. I want to set it to tabular. So to do that, I'll just go to row headers and turn off the steps, and I'll show you how to move it out in just a moment. And then on the subtotals, I want to get rid of subtotals on rows and subtotals on columns. I just want the grand total across the bottom. All right, so that looks good. One last thing I want to do is I'm going to come over to the sales option for a moment. I'm going to copy this year here, and then I'm going to paste it up here. And I'm going to let them sync. So when I change the field on one, it'll automatically change it on the other. So I'll go back to 2027. Now if I come back over here, I'm on 2027. So those are synced up. Now what I'm going to do is do something a little fun, it'll be a little more powerful. I'm going to make this a cross-reference report, and I'm going to tell it that people can, that the connections will drill on the year and let me go back to the page, and the month. Now it automatically put this, I should have moved this, it automatically put this back arrow on here. So in Power BI Desktop, I would just do a control back to go back. But I want to go back to this page for a moment. I'm going to rename it to detail. I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to hide this page when we publish it. Now what will happen is when I'm in the sales area here, if I highlight on March and I right mouse click, I have a drill through option, and I could go to that report and I just see month, and I should have expanded that out so I could see the name. I just see month, I see the month name, and I see the month information. I probably should have added gross margin out there too. So let me do that. And then we're going to publish this. So there's my gross margin. And you know what? Let's also go through and put the document type so we can see if it's an invoice or a return, and the document number. All right, so we're going to continue expanding this. There we go. Nice. That looks really good. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and just publish this information. I'm going to save it. So you need to be logged into your Power BI, and I'm logged into one of my fake accounts. And then to publish it, all you have to do is click on Publish, and you'll have workspaces. Now, if you have the professional version, you could even see your Office 365 Teams. But I'm just going to publish this to my personal workspace right now. And then once it publishes, I'm just not going to click on the link because I have it out here. I could come in and let me refresh this page. Here I am logged in to Power BI Desktop, which is just, you go to powerbi.com and log in. I'm logged in as the same user up here. I now can see my workspace. And if I click on this, I'm going to, if I click on report, there's the dashboards we talked about. We haven't built one yet. They get built in here. Here's the report. I don't have a workbook set up yet, but I do have a data set. So the data set consists of all three of those Excel files I connected to. I could simply add a workbook here if I want to, but here's my report. And if I click on this, I can see the report. And again, it's still interactive as a report. So if I click on Australia, I'm going to see that change. If I go to cells, notice there is no detail button, but I could change the years if I want. We'll go to 2026, and let's look at March. We'll right mouse click, we'll drill through to the detail report, and I could see some additional detailed information. So all that's cool. I can now share that with people. But let's do a couple more things here before we go back to our slide deck, because I want you to see how powerful this is. Oh, and by the way, this is all available from the website or from my mobile app if I log in. Now, if I want to have this customer account appear on a dashboard, I could simply pin this down. It says, you don't have a dashboard yet. Do you want to create one? Or if I do have one, I could choose existing dashboard. We'll call this one Mainer. And I'm going to pin. And I could click on go to dashboard, and now I see my dashboard. That's pretty cool. I'm going to go back to my workspace. I'm going to add just a little bit more. So let's go back to the report. And I'll add the top 5 customers. Here's Mainer, pin that down. And let me go to sales. Is there anything on sales or what? Nope. I'm going to just stick with these 2. Oh, maybe by state as well. Okay, so now that I have that, here is my dashboard, and you could move these things around. You could put your logo on here if you want to. You would just have to have the logo on a report. But we have the ability to ask questions of our data, and here are some sample ones. I could say how many. No, let's see. Let's say what is the average total cost? There it is. I'm going to say by item number. And there's item number. And now when I highlight that, you can see the blue and underline indicates fields. So if I don't want that by item number, maybe I want it by customer class. So I'm going to get rid of item number and change this to customer class. And now I can see the total average cost by customer class. And I'm not having to do anything but ask questions. So I'll pin that down to my dashboard as well. So when I exit the Q&A again, I now have that visual on my dashboard too. And so that's pretty cool. And actually, I'm gonna just shrink this one up so it's tiny. So it sits up there, and we'll move this one up. All right, one more thing that I want to do that is pretty powerful to show you before I close up. I am going to go to the data set, and I'm going to click on options, and I'm going to choose quick insights. Now, I know my data pretty well, so I know typically what I want to see, But there is an intelligence tool in here that will go through and evaluate all the data and look for trends and outliers to those trends. And when it finds them, it'll create a report for me. So I'll go ahead, it did it that fast, and view the insights. A lot of times you're not going to find anything that surprises you, but you might be surprised after all. So like this is one, and I'm not going to go through all of them. You can see there are a lot, but here's one that's telling me that the quantity by month, March has noticeably more. If this is something I want to track, I could pin this down as well. But these are insights that just appear as a result of what I see. So let me grab one more. And again, not all of them have real value. Let's see. Average of total cost, I guess this is going by day. Yep, by day. So I'm going to pin this one down as well. And now when I pin it down, if I go back to the dashboard, I now have more visuals. Now, once something is in your up in the service, you could schedule refreshes to happen, and how it refreshes depends upon the data set. There are a variety of ways. You could also share reports with people if you have the professional version. If you have something like, if I had put the customer cart, let me do this. If the total, got it. Let me pin down the total price for a moment. So I have the total price here. If on this total price, I want to be alerted when we hit $40,000, I could click on this ellipsis and I can add a alert. So I'll click on Manage Alerts and I'll choose Manage Alerts. I'll leave the alert for total sales price. If I say it goes above the $40,000, I want it to send me an email and send me an update. I'll get a notification up here. And it'll monitor it for me. And there's another tool called Power Automate where you could even have it update Teams or send other people emails or whatever the case may be. So this is the gist of Power BI in a super fast, because we are at the end of our time, but in a super fast mode. So let me return to my slide deck for just a moment. And so again, you would publish it. Once you create a dashboard, you can monitor your business. Some connections are live, so you can do some real-time things. Once you have something published, if you have the ability to share, you could have joint comments so people could comment on things on the dashboard, and it remembers it. So if you comment on like the balance of your bank account, someone says, why is it so low today? Then you can say, it'll keep it in that particular point in time. Then you would actually see what the balance was at that point. Maybe it's back up again. You could say, oh, we just did payroll. Again, using Power Automate, it used to be called Flow until a couple months ago. We could say, if you have an alert, send this person an email. That's something you can do, or put it on Teams or send this group. And then also, if you have the ability to share, people could subscribe to different changes you make in different reports. We talked a little bit about quick insights, and you have the ability, again, to run any of the reports and dashboards on your mobile app. All you have to do is download it.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much, Belinda, for joining us as well. And joining us for our Third Party Thursday. So thank you, Belinda. Have a great day, and thanks, everyone.